Hello there. Welcome to Blitz Transmissions. I'm Tommy, and today we have a very special interview, another addition to the Blitz Transmissions interview series. Today I have the privilege of speaking with Scott, the toy guru of Spector Creative. Scott, how are we doing today?
Hello there to you as well. Yeah, doing great. We're talking like toys and Star Wars today. I'm excited to be here.
Oh yeah, thank you for making the time to talk to me today. My dad and I have been enjoying your videos for 4, 5, 6 years now, and we've been sharing your videos back and forth since way before I started this YouTube thing. So now to have the opportunity to talk to you, I know my dad in particular, he's pretty excited to watch this when it comes out.
Well, that's awesome. I'm honestly, I don't get. It's like my everyone kind of knows my online presence with toys, but
Yeah.
outside of making videos, I don't do that much toy interaction except with a couple close friends. So this is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for being a supporter of the channel. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's probably one of my favorite parts of the toy community is that interaction outside of the videos, and the internet has been a great medium for me to make new friends and interact with people and have those connections, whereas otherwise it's like maybe just the 2 or 3 times a year I make it out to a toy show or a convention that I even get to talk to people. So the internet is a great tool for that.
We have a very isolating hobby. It's,
Yeah.
it's not like there's a team of collectors in every, like you have a soccer team of friends, or, my daughter has a team of friends. So anyway, continue.
Yeah, no problem. So before we get into the entirety of the interview, you'll be able to check out all of Scott and Spector Creative stuff in the link in the description below. So it'll be all listed down there. Anything that Scott wants to promote throughout this interview, you'll find linked down there, including the Spector Creative YouTube channel and the website. As far as my stuff goes, I'm sure you guys know the drill. There's a laundry list of links in the description below. If you're not yet subscribed on YouTube, subscribe, because I've got awesome Star Wars content coming out all the time. If you're an ARC Trooper on Patreon, you would have seen this interview a little early. If you'd like access to early content, monthly giveaways, other awesome benefits, you can check out the link to the ARC Trooper tier of the Patreon in the description below for just $5 a month. If you're a fan of stuff on YouTube, like a lot of the action figure reviews I do, or you want to support the YouTube channel more directly, check out that YouTube channel membership, Rancor Battalion. You get all that stuff early, as well as exclusive badges and early replies in the comment section. And in addition to that, you can check out the links to the Discord and all the social media. So now that I've given you my monologue, and everyone knows the drill if you're familiar with the channel, you guys already know where all the links are. Let's jump right in. So Scott, people watching may not be familiar with you, as this is a Star Wars toy-focused channel, so some of those people aren't privy to the wider community that is toy and action figure collecting. So kind of bring us up to speed on where you come from with this, what's gotten you to this point where you're doing this YouTube channel and you have a website and all these different prospects that you have now.
Sure. So I'll do like the Spaceballs, the short version. As far as Star Wars, I mean, I have been a lifelong fan of Star Wars. Quite literally, my parents took me when I was 6 months old and sat me on their lap, and they said I just stared at the screen for 2.5 hours without blinking. So clearly that explains a lot. Grew up collecting toys like most people. Got to junior high and high school and decided to be social and have friends and date girls, give up comic books and toys. And then college came along and met other people like us and realized, oh, wait, there are other geeky people, and geeky people actually rule the world. Started collecting toys again. Actually, I guess I started in late high school. I know exactly, actually, when I started with the Power of the Force 2 Chewbacca. That was the first toy I bought as an adult, not as a kid, if you will. I distinctly remember that. And then after college, I did my undergraduate work in Santa Barbara, California, in film and communication. Went into pharmaceutical marketing for a few years. I could tell you more about glaucoma than you ever wanted to know.
Okay.
I have like a medical degree in that. And then went to work for Mattel, the toy company, for 10 years. The way I got into that, a lot of people ask, is I had professional experience. The 5 years I spent in pharmaceutical marketing, I built up a portfolio. But more importantly, what I didn't really connect was the toy industry is a very highly regulated industry. You flip over any package and you're going to see small parts warnings and legal lines, and everything's in French and Spanish and Swahili. So much like the pharmaceutical industry, which is highly regulated, so is the toy. So that was how the recruitment happened. It wasn't as much my love for toys as much as my professional experience that got me the foot in the door. And I went on to work for Mattel for about 10 years. I started off in Hot Wheels and then moved over into the marketing group, where I had pitched and then managed a program called Matty Collector, which is exactly like Mattel Creations, what's something they have today, where we basically sold figures like monthly subscriptions and high-end items, pre-buys like HasLab. We were doing HasLab 15 years ago, before there was a HasLab. I was pretty proud of that. I worked for a few other toy companies after that, including Jakks Pacific, specifically because I was able to work on Episode 7 and Rogue One. So I did that was the first time I actually got to work on Star Wars action figures. Although I did launch Hot Wheels Star Wars while at Mattel. That was the last project
Okay.
I did. I was specifically brought into that from the action figure group because they're like, Scott, you know more about Star Wars than anyone else in the company. Can you help launch this? So that was kind of cool. So I basically ended Mattel with Star Wars and then started Jakks with Star Wars. So that was kind of like my 4 Star Wars years in the industry. And then after Jakks, I did some work for some smaller toy companies. Jada, I created the Metals, the little mini Metals line. I never had the Star Wars license for these, but DC, Harry Potter.
Yeah, I know those. Yeah.
Yep. So this was actually born out of the old Kenner micro line.
Yeah.
Star Wars micro line. I brought some in, dumped them on the desk, and said, "Let's do this." And then moved to about 2019 or so. My family we moved to North Carolina for purely just a better quality of life. California is a tough place to raise children. It's very expensive.
Yeah.
And we've been in Greensboro ever since. I started Spector Creative, which is a consulting company. So I provide branding, content creation, e-commerce solutions, mostly for clients in the toy industry, a lot of inventors, like people who have new ideas for toys, and I help them get it to market. So people who have an idea that they either want to sell it online, they want to sell it to Target, they want to sell it to Mattel. There's so many different avenues of getting toys to market. So that's what I do at SpectorCreative.com. And then I also I write historical adventure books like The Nile Quest and The Time of Clive. This one's actually, if you like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom,
okay.
Remember the line where Indy's like, "Oh, I want to talk about older times before the time of Clive." And they're always talking about how the British never forget the rebellion of 18. That's what this book's about. All that stuff from that dinner party. That's why I always wanted to know. Like, I literally wrote this to learn it myself. So if you like Temple of Doom, check out Time of Clive on Amazon. You'll love it. It's a nonstop action book. Okay, enough of that. So that's what basically got me here. So I offer consulting with Spector Creative, and then during the pandemic, like all of us, I was bored and I started a YouTube channel, and I found there was kind of a very unique voice I could offer, being someone who was talking about the toy industry and collecting, but actually worked in the industry. Most people are just have opinions that they hide as facts. And it actually kind of disturbed me seeing videos of people saying things that I just knew were factually not true. And it was causing a lot of misrepresentation and frustration among us, the toy collecting community, regardless of what brand we collect. So that was a big reason I kind of started the channel, was just sort of clear the air and put out actual information. And I think that has really helped. We're doing very well. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Check it out, Spector Creative on YouTube. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right. There's definitely a few things I want to talk about based on what you said. But first, I think right now your channel boasts over 34,000 subscribers, if I'm not mistaken. Would that be correct?
We're somewhere between 34 and 35,000.
Yeah, that's awesome. Especially in such a short period of time. Some people on YouTube, they'll go 10, 12 years they've been around and they don't hit numbers like that. So that's very impressive. The funniest thing that I thought was, I guess, timely for you to bring up was people who hide opinions as fact. And that is something that I just talked about on my last episode of my podcast, the Blitzcast. With my channel, I am very enthusiastic about toys. I, like you, like many other people that I talk to in this community of any generation, is that it starts as a kid. You get super infatuated, whether it's G.I. Joe, Star Wars, Transformers, DC, Marvel, you name it. We get infatuated with these fictional universes. And then that comes with buying physical representations of those characters, of those things that give us that emotional, that serotonin kick for, getting those things that remind us of our childhood. And I always had some sort of collecting because I was poisoned from the start. My dad was a collector in the 90s of Star Wars, so he got all the Power of the Force 2. He had he got 2 of everything. All the figures from the Phantom Menace line in 1999. He bought all of the Attack of the Clones figures that came out in 2002, all the way up until I was about 6 or 7. And then he started, giving stuff to me and passing things along. And so I was poisoned from the start with this whole toy collecting aspect. And so in high school it was Legos, in college it was for a little bit Funko Pops, and then I went back to action figures. And it's never, now I just anything with the Star Wars logo on it, new, old, vintage, on pre-order. I'm picking a little bit of everything and curating my display based on what Star Wars means to me. And that's something that I talk to a lot of people about. Like I've spoken with Daryl DePriest on the channel before. Anyone watching, you can check out that interview in the playlist here. Talked to Michael Havens, the guy who runs ICCCon in Nashville, Tennessee. Everybody has a similar story, and there's something that we all share in that, and that's that nostalgia, that kick that we get as adults. And if I'm not mistaken, there was recently a report that came out saying that adult collectors have overtaken kids in the action figure market. I can't remember where I saw that article, but it was definitely in the last month or two.
Yeah, it actually, I don't know if they've overtaken, but they are it has changed.
Yes.
I was actually doing I was working with a client yesterday on some Japanese brands, and we were talking, and I was just looking at the figures. I hadn't looked at them in a while. I was like, yeah,
Yep.
wow, adult collector is now like a $6 billion. I mean, even in just the last 3 years, it's grown. I think COVID had a lot to do with that. It sparked a lot of people. And yeah, it is. I wish it was this big when I was at Mattel. We could have done a lot more figures.
Yeah, but with back to the misinformation thing, that's something that I always try to pursue on this channel is acknowledging when my feelings about something are my personal opinion as a consumer, and not whenever I'm speculating about the decisions that a company is making. I try to make sure to let my audience know, hey, this is just my opinion. This is what I think it might be, with the very limited knowledge that I have on the business side of things, because I've never worked at the toy companies. Even though I've spoken to people who do work and have worked at the toy companies, I can only know so much information. And I see it all the time. And it's to the point now where a lot of people on the internet have found a way to monetize that misinformation and that frustration that you were talking about. And they'll get hundreds of thousands of views on their videos and make money off of their videos just spreading misinformation. So it's some very rough waters that we found ourselves in the toy community, specifically online. And that's why I always encourage people to, touch grass once in a while, go outside, breathe in the fresh air, because these toys are supposed to make us happy instead of, being so angry. Now on the other side of that same coin, we do have the importance of, as, an adult consumer, pointing out inaccuracies in figures and things that are maybe not screen accurate or comic accurate. And that's a video that you just put out as we're recording this morning on your channel, was talking about the vintage collection retro Kenner 4-pack, which I do have on pre-order. But could you, I guess, before we jump into broader topics here, could you explain to me, because this is something that I've always been a little confused by as a fan who I'm 24. I'll be 25 in December. So I grew up with the prequel trilogy, the Clone Wars animated show. That for me is my childhood Star Wars, and a lot of people my age feel the same. So we don't really understand the affinity from your generation with the repaint new figures with the Kenner colors. For me, that's not something that excites me, but I also do a show every other Monday on the YouTube channel Sarlacc Digest. I'm a co-host over there for their Toy Chest show. Those guys are your age, and they constantly talk about how with the Black Series, for example, they want figures that are painted like Kenner figures. And what is the affinity? Is it just that childhood nostalgia, or is it something more than that when it comes to that?
I mean, it definitely, it's the childhood nostalgia, but you have to kind of realize, and I think you put it really well, where you were saying like, yeah, you're a prequel kid, if you will. I saw the prequels came out when I was in college. I was an original trilogy kid.
Yeah.
And nostalgia is obviously part of it, but with the original trilogy and when toys, well, the time, meaning 77 through 85, right, was very, very different. Not just, the world was different, but let's just zoom in on Star Wars toys and how they were different. So with the prequel era, you've got unlimited toys everywhere. Jar Jar was on everything. Darth Maul was on everything. It was over the top, overshipped, overpriced, and a lot of it is, sitting in bargain bins these days. The original line when it came out, and I was actually a film major, and I did a lot of work on this. I wrote my senior thesis in college on film marketing through toys, if you will. I mean, like using toys to market a movie.
Yeah.
And so obviously I had to hit on Star Wars in that. So if you go back to the 70s, toys were not viewed as a licensed toys were not looked at as a money-making option. There were very few. I mean, there were Planet of the Apes. There were a few Star Trek things. You had Mego dolls for Welcome Back, Kotter, sitcoms, Happy Days. TV shows were a much better bet for a toy maker because the TV show was on all year, or at least throughout, until it went into reruns, or multiple months, let's say at least. With a movie, this is pre-home. We're living in a world where you can watch A New Hope by pressing probably about 5 buttons, and you're 5 buttons away from watching A New Hope, maybe 3, right? Well, in the early 80s, the only way to watch Star Wars was in theaters until VHS really came out in the mid-early, 83, 84. So you had a good 4 years where the only way you could experience Star Wars was in the theater or through toys. And that's the big thing. Nowadays, we have everything. You said yourself, Lego, Funko. I call this the age of licensing or splicing, where they're taking the same concept and splitting it up among 100 different toy makers in tiny different ways. Back then, Kenner, that was it. It was just the Kenner figures, and they were late to the game. They couldn't even get them out in time for the movie. It was a year later. Can you imagine, Phantom Menace coming out, or what's Fantastic Four, right? Is coming out in a few days. But imagine we're not going to get the toys until next summer. You'd be moved on to the next thing at this point. Star Wars was so powerful that they were a year late, and people were still going gaga. And that's because the only way you could enter that world at home was through toys. So, playing with Walrus Man here in these vintage Kenner colors, this was it. Your canteen, all the aliens in the entire cantina were basically represented by 3 guys, Hammerhead, Walrus Man, and Snaggletooth, Greedo. That was it. And because you think of it as such a scarcity that, that's why painting modern figures in those vintage colors, it's more than nostalgia. That was our portal into Star Wars. You couldn't just pop it. You couldn't even pop the videotape in, the Laserdisc, the DVD, none of that. You had to play with your toys to create a sequel to Star Wars. And that's why the nostalgia for the older stuff with that group is so strong. I think that's stronger than, if you will, your generation growing up with the Clone Wars cartoon. Yeah, you love that, but there's no lack of product out there.
Yeah, and we're seeing that kind of, which thank you for explaining it, because I think that's the first time I understand it more. I understand why there is a demand for, I do understand things like Kenner Colors Boba, but when I saw the excitement about that vintage collection 4-pack, I picked one up because I have an inside joke. I have some friends that do a show called Monday Night Figure Ball. They're a Star Wars action figure focused show. There's 4 of them, and the 4 of them are like those 4 characters. So that was why I picked one up. But now I can understand why that sold out, because that to me was a little bit took me aback a little bit when I saw that it sold out at first and then they put it back in stock like a week or two later. But yeah, that was a very good explanation. So with nostalgia and things like that, there's a theory that Daryl DePriest has, and it's called the 20-year rule. It's the stuff that you grew up with as a kid. About 20 years later, that's where you start to go out of your way as an adult in the collecting space to look for that stuff that you grew up with, whether it's appearances of those characters or the actual older stuff. Like me myself, it's definitely the animated Clone Wars action figure line. So I have a bunch of like the multi packs and the carded figures. I have some open stuff. I have a wish list when I go to toy shows of like vehicles and things from when I was a kid that I want now, and I think that right now is like the sweet spot, because we're hitting that 20-year mark in 2028 for Clone Wars. My opinion, and many people closer to my age, I feel like it's been great to see the toy companies in general kind of leaning into more prequel and Clone Wars era stuff, because that's what we grew up with. That's what we want to buy. Do you feel like the original trilogy stuff still has a leg to stand on in the next coming years? Because I hear a lot of conversation about how, original trilogies had its time. They've had their love for the action figures and stuff. Maybe they need a backseat, or maybe they need a break. I'm not of that opinion. I think that we should have a nice balance of all the eras of Star Wars. Maybe not some of the newer stuff, because I feel like it wouldn't sell as well. But what's your take on that opinion that people have?
Well, I could definitely give you kind of both an opinion and I guess, a fact-based answer, because I've seen the, when I was working on Star Wars product with, I got to go to Lucasfilm. I got to go to, the tour of the whole building, see the Yoda statue. The original trilogy outsells everything else like 10-1. It really does. After that is the Clone Wars, and then after that everything falls off. Then the prequels with the Clone Wars a bit, but the Darth Vader, Chewbacca, R2-D2, and C-3PO are so ridiculously popular. The fact that they're not constantly always on shelf is leaving money on the table. You should produce some clones, you should produce some Jedi, but just looking at, I know what sells. And then personally as a fan, like, going back to the previous topic we were just talking about, that experience and that nostalgia for, those years when, the only way to experience Star Wars was to play Star Wars, to read the storybooks or listen to the audio records. I remember listening, I had the storybook record for Star Wars, and I would wear it out as a kid because that was it. That was all you had. And, that created so much. That was the engine for this fandom, was that, this was unlike anything we'd ever had before. Now there's a billion things that are just like Star Wars. And there's too much Star Wars, in my opinion. Like, the more Star Wars they make, the more it dilutes the brand. I enjoyed Mandalorian. I've enjoyed some of the new stuff. I really thought Rebels, especially the last few seasons, got really good. I liked Ahsoka. But there's just so much stuff out. Like when you say Star Wars, you could mean everything from Bane Valor to, Wicket the Ewok. There's just such a huge span now.
Yeah.
So yes, they should absolutely be focused on. It was lightning in a bottle. You can't recreate that. They can keep churning out and slapping the word Star Wars on everything from, lesbian space witches to, Goonies in space. They're trying everything and they're just slapping the word Star Wars on it. And that original trilogy, especially that first film, was not, replicable. Repeatable. I sometimes equate it with like great authors or great, singer songwriters. Like we don't need more. You can't get more Beatles. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I know they did
Right.
like that one song they put together that everyone hated, but that's the thing. It's like it had it, and celebrate it. You can Disney, yay, you own it, make money off of it, but you're diluting it, I think, by making more and more and more. I mean, look, the Disney movies, they don't sell. They don't sell. And
No.
Disney knows this because of Disney Plus. That's the thing.
Yep.
They know what people are watching, and you saw a shift in the last 3 years since Disney Plus launched, where you couldn't find original trilogy figures for a good chunk of the last 5 years. And now, I mean, like, look at Tatooine is their theme for this year for 3 3/4. I mean, it's crazy the amount of original trilogy figures we're getting. So,
yeah, I would say that the thing I agree most with you about is that there's been too much too fast. The Disney Plus era of Star Wars, which I would deem to be like 2019 when it first launched with The Mandalorian, all the way till I would say that this era of Star Wars is kind of ending in 2025 because they're finally pumping the brakes on how many new shows are coming out. Because before they were doing like 2-3 shows a year. Now there's not now the Andor's over. The next Star Wars show, Ahsoka Season 2, isn't coming out until next summer. And that's a project that they already started, so it's at least a continuing story. Same with Mandalorian and Grogu movie coming out next year as well. That's already an established story that they're actually taking their time to put together as opposed to just always making sure there's constantly Star Wars. And from the toy perspective, that's something that my friends and I share frustrations about a lot is Hasbro can only make X amount of figures a year. Jazzwares, I collect their Micro Galaxy Squadron line. They, with the budget that they're given a year with tooling and character selection, you have to go to those meetings with Lucasfilm and go through like what characters are we going to make. There's only so much money and there's only so much product that can be made each year, and these companies can't even keep up with all the new Star Wars coming out. I have, a shelf for The Mandalorian. I'm still waiting on main characters from The Mandalorian show. I have a display for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which wasn't my favorite, but there were some parts that I really, really loved about that show, like all the Obi-Wan and Vader stuff. And that for that reason, I felt I wanted to have figures from that show. I still don't have the little kid Princess Leia, who I thought was phenomenal in the show, and she's one of the main characters. There's no action figure. Another one being like the Bad Batch, which as a Clone Wars kid, I absolutely loved the Bad Batch show. And I'm still waiting on the TK Troopers, which are like the precursor to the Stormtroopers. Those guys are in all 3 seasons, and people would buy multiples of those, and those are nowhere to be found. And Dr. Hemlock, the main villain of the second half of the show, nowhere to be found. So but it's only because they can't keep up. There's too much Star Wars happening too quickly. And again, now that I finally have a break, I can like take the time and rewatch some shows that have come out in the last few years and kind of maybe my opinion changes a little bit, positively or negatively on things. And I hope that, the toy companies are going to start not just going back to the stuff that I grew up with, but I also kind of want to catch up on the catalog a little bit on some of those major characters that we haven't gotten any representation for from those recent shows.
And I think, the fact that Star Wars figures have been going for so long, and except for between 85 and 95, they've been pretty much consistently out there, which is another thing. I think that, if you will, not saying your generation, you young whippersnappers, but, you guys don't, there was a time where there was nothing out there for Star Wars. There was 10 years where there was nothing. Um, but I mean, to your point, they're putting out so many of these figures, with so much of this content that they don't even know if there's a fan base for them yet.
Yeah.
And it's like you were saying that you don't have the big bad from Bad Batch, or main characters from Man. We've never gotten an Emperor Palpatine from Episode 9.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
think
another
about
one.
that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but that's again why for a long time Lucasfilm dictated what characters companies could make when they
Yeah.
basically between 16 and 19, more or less. And you can see that change, where you can now go out and buy. I mean, there's a deluxe Moma Nadone out there right now, a Cantina Ale. I mean, I know it's for the Cantina set, but there's a lot of there's classic Leia, Han, Chewbacca, and Luke in both scales on shelf, pretty more or less now. So, that's where the money is, and I think that we've been spoiled by how deep Star Wars has been able to go, and I don't see it doing that going forward.
Neither do I. That's the sad part. Is
Yeah.
I want it to, because again, that's what I grew up with. I grew up with when the Phantom Menace line was out. Characters like Rick O'Lee, who's the pilot on the Naboo ship, or
I know who Rick O'Lee is.
or all the pod
And
racers.
this one controls the pitch.
Yeah. And it's we just don't see that anymore. I will say though, to your point a little bit, I can tell that there's been a difference in how those meetings go between the toy companies and Lucasfilm, because in the last few years, character selection has gotten exponentially better across the board. The selection of the balance more of new media versus legacy media has gotten much more or much better, I should say. And it's to the point now where I can enjoy like the Mandalorian season 3 Moff Gideon more because I know that I can also enjoy the brand new Commander Cody that just came out for the Revenge of the Sith anniversary. So I'm getting the best of both worlds now, as opposed to where I think my frustration is sometimes it's Star Wars, yes, and I understand that's how it's always been, is marketing, the new thing that's coming out. But I'm not a fan of the all or nothing mentality. We either do all of one era and then everything else gets left in the dust, or so I'm enjoying the balance now that we seem to be having.
And I think I mentioned a moment ago, it's Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Disney Plus has now given them they know to the millisecond what people watch.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's watching the new stuff, but people can. I watch Empire, A New Hope, and Jedi. I just keep them, honestly, they'll just run in the background. And yes, I run them off Disney Plus as opposed to my DVDs just because it's easier.
Mm-hmm.
I much prefer to watch. I have the original theatrical cuts on DVD the one time they release them, and I would much rather watch those. But that requires hooking up a DVD player and blah blah blah.
Right.
So yeah, I do watch on Disney Plus, but I don't. I've only seen the Disney sequel trilogy. I've seen episode 7 a bunch of times because I worked on that, and I've seen Rogue One a whole bunch of times because I worked on that. I've only seen episode 8 and 9 once, and I've seen A New Hope over 900 times. So there you go. It's like they know they know what sells because of Disney Plus now.
So I kind of want to jump into so before we get into like what you collect and what you prefer for newer stuff, older stuff, what you name it. Recently you did a couple videos on Black Series, and they weren't necessarily us younger people would call it glazing, which is like being super positive and being very happy and emphatic for a brand. You're pointing out some flaws that you feel the line currently has. One of those flaws that you pointed out was that there are too many troopers in the Black Series as opposed to other the 3 3/4 scale. As again from a generational perspective, I grew up with Clone Wars, so I and many others view clone troopers very differently than your stormtroopers or other types of Star Wars troopers. And the reason for that is because something that the Clone Wars show did was really drive home this point right from the get-go, that every clone trooper is an individual, even though they all come from the same genetic makeup of Jango Fett. They are each one an individual in the Force, and you see that throughout the show. They customize their armor more, they carry different weapons, they have different haircuts, personality traits, tattoos, things like that. And when I was a kid with the 3.75 Clone Wars line, that was like I cared more about getting clone troopers than anything else. And I talked to so many people my age where the clone troopers are a different category than a stormtrooper is, because it's essentially it's every clone trooper is a new character in our eyes. However, I do agree with you on the point when it comes to like other troopers. The Andor show. I don't know if you watched the Andor show, I assume.
Yeah.
I love Andor as an adult Star Wars fan. I feel like a show targeted at us, at adults. They executed that perfectly. When it comes to the action figures, though, just recently, some of my friends and I, we've been talking about the frustration with it's half of that shelf. I have a shelf of Andor figures. More than half of the figures are random troopers from the background of different scenes, as opposed to, where are my main characters? Where is Clea Markey, the Luthen Rail's assistant at the shop? Where is Cyril Karn, the guy who's spending the entire show trying to kill Cassian Andor for killing his cohorts and getting him fired from his job? I would rather have those characters. Would they probably sell as well to the mass market as a trooper variant? No, but as far as, representation on the shelf, I do agree with you that there is sometimes an oversaturation of just random trooper repaints when it comes to troopers that are not clones. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Commander Bly, Commander Cody, yada yada, and to me, I don't think I have any issue with that kind of thing. It's more that it's more likely we will get a gaming greats stormtrooper commander with a bazooka than the characters you mentioned from Andor, the main characters.
Yeah.
So it's more like those low-hanging fruit variants. Yes, you should be doing Commander Gree, and you should be doing Cody, and of course they're different characters. I get it. It's when they just start over and over, because they have the tools and they know they sell. Mm-hmm. But as you said, but for the adult collector, who is now more and more of the market, as we're seeing, we take a step back and exactly. You look at your Andor shelf and you're like, that's to me, that's the issue. It's not having Cody and, why am I blanking on the blue,
Captain Rex.
Captain Rex. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's not like, I mean, Rex and Cody, of course, main characters, they look kind of similar because they both got clone armor in different colors. That's not what it's your example with the Andor shelf. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And grubby humans. It's just so many grubby humans, from Andor to Dr. Evazan. I mean, they're all just grubby humans. We have I look at, like, I see your shelf behind you and I can tell who's a Red Royal Guard. I can tell who's a stormtrooper from this, and I can see you've got lots of grubby humans, versus, I'm surprised that they don't even have X-Wing pilots out. They have that body.
They desperately need to redo that X-Wing pilot body, because it's like, in scale, it's like a 5'5" person.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know.
Oh man, I wish they would redo that. So, okay, because that was when I was watching your video. You were talking about that specific point, and then you brought up, look at all these X-Wing pilots I have for the 3.75 scale, and that I feel like is a good example of what I was talking about with clone troopers. I feel like you collect X-Wing pilots the same way. Is they have different markings on the helmets. Each one is an individual, as opposed to just another trooper, another trooper, another
Right,
trooper.
giving them an accessory saying it's from a video game and there's now a blast mark on the helmet. Like,
Right.
it'll sell to kids. I get it. They walk in, it's a stormtrooper with a bazooka. But yeah, and I get from a tooling perspective, from a repaint, financially, I understand why they do that. But it's my point is that's why I couldn't get into the Black Series line, because I take a step back and I don't feel like it represents Star Wars.
Yeah. So it seems to me like you're more in favor of the 3.75 scale, the 3 3/4 scale. What do you collect when it comes to Star Wars? Whether it's vintage stuff, older stuff, newer stuff. What is your focus if you were to walk into a store and see Star Wars stuff? What is the stuff that you prefer to buy?
So my number one is classic trilogy, meaning 4, 5, 6,
Yep.
3 3/4. I own every 3 3/4 classic trilogy figure from Power of the Force Chewbacca through I'm like, who's the latest? This was the story, that 3-pack story of Anakin Skywalker.
Yes.
Whatever. Which I bought. I bought that pack for this Vader. I didn't want the Anakin. I mean, I kept the Anakin, but
yeah.
So I am all in on 3 3/4 classic trilogy, as in like every figure. I don't but like if it's a tiny paint variant, I won't that. But like even like the new Dengar, which they're not putting less paint on, but it actually looks more like the movie. I'm picking that up.
Yeah.
So to me, that's my addiction. Any character they put out, if it's classic trilogy and 3 3/4 inch scale, like my goal is to one day have a shelf like you have behind you where I have every figure in the exact release order, because that's how I've kept them.
That'd be cool.
In my bins. Literally, as each one comes out, and I've been marking it from dates. I will buy 6-inch figures, Black Series. I have quite a few, but it's basically characters that I mean, either a main character, like I had to get a Darth Vader.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely not even close to being all in. And I wouldn't even call myself a cherry picker. I'm even lower than that. I'm just like, yeah, okay. Like every once in a while, I'll get a Black Series figure if I just think it looks really cool, et cetera, et cetera. And then outside of that, I used to collect a lot of Tusken Raider stuff, but that was kind of prequels. When there's just so much now.
Yeah.
I used to, and I still have a great collection of Star Wars coffee table books and reference books.
Oh, those are great.
90s.
Yeah, those are great.
Especially there's one called the Star Wars Chronicles, which is just one of the best coffee table books ever made. It's unbelievable. It's got stuff images from A New Hope and Empire that have just never seen print anywhere else. Soundtracks, I also collect. Especially, the original trilogy. I've got quite a few cuts of those. I'm like looking around. I have lots of one-off things. I have a space slug oven mitt.
Yeah.
Lots of weird stuff like that. But really the big 3 3/4 figures. I bought the Cantina, the HasLab Cantina. I don't really buy vehicles.
Yeah.
I didn't get the sail barge, but I do have a Hasbro Dagobah X-wing, and I've got I've got the Land Speeder coming with Luke, probably on the way. So, dewbacks, I love dewbacks. It's like a Star Wars dinosaur.
Those are a good one.
I'll pretty much get a dewback in almost any scale.
Yeah.
The only one I regret missing was that there was a 12-inch Hasbro one that they put out in the early 90s.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and it was like $40 back in the day, and I so regret I never got that, because I'm sure now it goes for hundreds.
Yeah, well, they did just release a Hot Toys, the 12-inch line. Hot Toys just recently did one. Yeah,
I have a Hot Toys Vader. I don't know if my screen is blurry. It's that black blur.
Yeah,
that's up there. You can see on my top shelf. Yeah, it's shelf space. Basically, and 3 3/4, it comes from just again, these figures, as a kid. It's these are my figures. Like I keep them. That's how much, this is my Obi-Wan Kenobi, that I grew up with. So it's like it definitely comes from what I had.
So it's I have to say, as like a sidebar, it's really cool to have these conversations, because again, I don't remember if I mentioned this before we started talking on the recording or after, but something that I pursue on my channel is perspective. If you can understand where we've come from, we can understand things that are happening now, and we can understand the direction that we need to go in to for collecting as a whole, and for Star Wars collecting to flourish as time goes on, because things change, people change, and that's a key component of Star Wars in general, is the passing of the torch, that from generation to generation. My dad loved Star Wars. He passed it down to me. I love Star Wars equally as much, if not more. And now, when I have kids, I'll pass it down to them, and it will be this generational thing that you don't see with a lot of other franchises the way that you see it with Star Wars. Something that I find very interesting, though, is the Kenner stuff. I've actually gained a lot of perspective this year with the Kenner stuff, because prior to this year, I did not own any Kenner in my personal collection. Then I went to ICC-Con in Nashville, which I brought up a couple times now. Great Star Wars collecting convention. They focus a lot on the Kenner stuff, and I was like, you know what? I'm not privy to this era of Star Wars collecting. I obviously know about it, and I know, the figures that came out, what's valuable, what's not. But it's the only era of Star Wars toy that I didn't have in my collection. So I did a video on my channel, and I built a Kenner display. I bought the Hoth turret set. I bought the turret and probe set. I bought the blue TIE fighter from Return of the Jedi with the battle damage stickers on it. And I had each of my friends that I went to the convention with pick out a Kenner figure for that shelf. And through doing all the research and talking to the vendors, I understand more what it is about that specific line that gets people excited about Star Wars toys to this day. Something that, and again, I do contribute this to, partially it's the fault of the online influencer, as it's now called, people that spread misinformation, or like, I love how you phrased it, disguising opinion as fact. It become people that pretend, that talk like they have authority and knowledge on a subject, but they really don't. And then, people watch these people online, and they take what they're saying seriously, and then they'll go and spread the misinformation even more. It's this really bad sickness that I found in the online space as of the last 5 or so years, because the creators have realized they can make money off of it. What is it? Because personally, I feel like this mindset and this mentality on the online space is kind of pushing people away from the hobby. Maybe if you're kind of curious about it, maybe getting into collecting. I feel like there's not, on top of that though, there's not that like wow factor with Star Wars toys right now from any brand. Like, yes, I love to collect Hot Toys. You can see some up here on the top. I collect a lot of the Clone Troopers. There's the Jazzwares line is a lot of fun because it's different. It's that 1-inch scale with the vehicles, so I can get a lot of vehicles in a small space. Black Series is the character line. TVC being the playset line. But I feel like there's not something that's like game changing right now, if that makes sense. So with 2027 being the 50th anniversary of the Star Wars franchise, and obviously the first movie, what is there anything that Star Wars could do for toys, like that the company could do that could really bring back that wow factor? Whether it's something that you could introduce into an already existing line or something new entirely. Is this something you've thought about?
I follow exactly what you're saying. And, part of it is, it's like, yeah, we've had 50 years of these toys, and how much innovation, they've it's funny because it's the innovation with Star Wars toys is so secular, where like when they did the, I want to say it was like episode 9 in the Han Solo movie, had the chips in the feet, right? And you put it on the glove or something, and it would talk, which was the exact same thing they had for Phantom Menace 20 years earlier with the Comtech. And I brought this up with a Hasbro designer. I was like, "Oh, cool! You're like doing Comtech. Like, what's Comtech?" And that's exactly what it is. It's just like they thought they invented talking Star Wars toys. So part of the problem is that the toy industry has such huge quick turnover.
Yeah.
Very few people are like Daniel DePriest that stay on a brand for 20 years. When Daryl, just call him Daniel, when Daryl DePriest was running Star Wars, we got some of the best figures in
Ever.
in 50 years. I mean,
Yeah.
the 30th anniversary line, I mean, there's so much good stuff coming. The Saga collection, all of that was his tenure. So part of it is that the people running it now are just kind of, your rotating door of marketing managers that have MBAs. The other part just being we've got so much. Like, how do you innovate? Like, what do you and then cost? It costs so much to make these now. Basic vintage figures are $17. Black Series are going to be $30 before the end of the year.
I bet.
It's like, how do you celebrate the 50th anniversary? I mean, I think the Cantina is pretty innovative with HasLab, the giant play sets. That's something that we have been asking for 50 years. I mean, I put down money on that the moment. I mean, I bought that 10 years ago before I was like, they ever make a Cantina playset, it's mine.
Yeah.
Like, I knew I would buy. That was a pre-buy in my head.
Mm-hmm.
There's very strong rumors they're doing a Death Star, follow-up. I think that doing these giant set pieces is really where they're going. As far as innovation, it's kind of the last place to go is, building the planet, if you will.
Yeah.
And everything else. Now we're getting planets, and bars disguised as dollhouses and sail barges disguised as dollhouses. So that's the innovation. I mean, I think the sail barge was very innovative. It got a lot of people excited.
Yeah.
Especially because it just skidded to the finish line and then had such huge aftermarket value compared to something like Galactus, which is barely gone up in price. You can basically buy him for market.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm blathering on, but
no problem at all.
I'd love to see major innovation, but it's like they've done every scale, from micro and like actually what you were just saying about the Jada vehicle line, right? Is it Jada? No, not
Jazzwares.
Jazzwares. Too many toy companies with J in their name. That's no different from the
Micro Machines
action fleet from the 90s. It's like, what's new? It's all the same thing. Just like this Chewbacca that I just got from the Epic line, the one with like the snap-on. What the hell did I do with? Oh, I put it in the back room. But this is the little kid one with the hole in the back, right?
Yeah.
But here we are, 3 3/4 Chewbacca. Like, there's not that many new ways to play. Too, you also got to remember that play patterns dictate toys.
True.
So, and a play pattern for those of if your audience, if they're not familiar, that is an established way that children play. So, nurturing play, girls with dolls or boys with dolls. Wheels play, taking two cars and racing them, or action figure play is usually called doinky doink play because you're doink doink, you're smashing two figures together. There's not a new, suddenly there's not a new way kids are playing except staring at screens in the last 20 years. It's not like suddenly there's all new way kids are engaging with imagination and toy product and play. That's what dictates innovation in toys. So what was so great about these figures back in the day is, being able to put them in that vehicle, and it made you in charge. You got to fly the Millennium Falcon by putting Han in that cockpit and clipping that door closed. That was the magic moment. That was the innovation. Mm-hmm. How do you recapture something as simple as that just inspires play? That's a hard challenge.
Yeah. I think from my childhood, one of the most innovative and most captivating things was the fad, now we call it, of the Toys to Life. It started with Skylanders, and then it was with the Disney Infinity. They kind of ripped off that, and there was someone else that did. It was Lego Dimensions or whatever their ripoff was, and the Amiibos for Nintendo. I was a huge Skylanders kid. I played Skylanders like the first 3 games. I bought almost every figure. Every time we went to, back when Toys R Us was open, I would have my parents would take me to Toys R Us or GameStop or you name it, and I would buy a Skylander because at the time they were 9, 10, $11. You could get 3 of them for like $20, and I could, because video games were so popular at the time. I mean, they still are, but I could, when I was allowed to play video games, I was putting them on the portal, playing as those characters in the game. But when it was time to turn the video game off, I could still play with the figures, the physical little figures, and I would, like you said, the doinky doink play, where I would like smash them all together, and they would be separated into teams based on the elements and everything. I feel like if Star Wars could figure out something like that, where they could incorporate it into a game that you could play both online and in real life, I feel like that would really. I mean, again, it's like you said, it's cyclical. It really is like you were looking at something old and bringing it back. However, with how central technology is to our lives now, and video games, and every kid has a tablet now, and every kid has an iPad or an Xbox or a Nintendo Switch, like I feel like there's a market that's missing there that really could be used with that toys to life gimmick, bringing that back.
And I actually often tell clients that there's sort of 3 major fallacies in the toy industry, and that is the in your example, I would call that the physical to app toy, the 3D printed toy, and the gender neutral toy. The toy industry keeps hanging its hat thinking if they could just crack one of those 3, it would save the toy industry. But I maintain that they're all fallacies. Yes, Skylanders was an awesome app to video game concept, and it worked really. I actually am surprised it isn't still going. I thought that was like, wow, yeah, that makes sense. Little figures, you put them on the portal, you can play them in a game. I mean, Disney did that with Star Wars with their toy box, version. So it has existed in some sense. But all 3 of those, the genderless toy. I mean, I call that the hula hoop and the ball, or checkers, or playing cards, and then this focus on 3D printing. All 3 of those, the toy industry is just so betting that, again, if they could just crack one of them, it would save the industry. But if you look at recent failures, like Mattel did a line called Aptivity a few years ago, where it was much like Skylanders. You took a Mattel toy, like it was like a chess piece, right? And they put it right on the app, and like it was shaped like a Hot Wheel, so you would drive it, and as you drove it, unlimited track or road would be scrolling down your screen. Problem is, the small little tokens scratched the iPads.
Yeah.
Same thing with they put out a $400 3D printer that was supposed to be like a family 3D printer. None of these companies are just throwing so much money at all 3 of these, and none of them. Play is play. You are not going to video games are video games, and they're fun. But trying to find that magical, if you could just plug AC and plug them together, and then if you could somehow get kids exercising while they use it, and 3D printing while they use it, and boys and girls can use it together equally, now you have the perfect toy. And again, going back to play patterns, that's not how kids play.
Yeah.
Video games, people just want to, pop in the cartridge or hit start or whatever it is and go. It's like, so yeah, innovation happens all the time. I mean, look at Furby, but they're more fads.
Yeah.
And you don't really see suddenly, like this all new play pattern come in that no one's ever seen before that is just going to dominate.
Yeah. And yeah, I did refer to it as a fad, the toys to life thing, because it was just it really did at the time, it took the world by storm. And then over time, the reason the franchise of Skylanders ended up failing was because they were trying to, like you said, they were trying to do too much. They incorporated, like, I think the 4th game, they incorporated and now there's these additional pieces that you have to also buy and put on the portal, and then then the next game had vehicles that you had to also buy, and you had to have the character and the vehicle on and it just got too complicated. Whereas they should have just stuck to their roots, and maybe as we're talking about this, maybe that's what Star Wars needs to do, is kind of return to its roots in 2027 if we want to have a fun, successful 50th anniversary of the franchise. Is just stick to what works and what has worked, as opposed to trying to dump money into some new exciting thing that's probably going to fall flat by the end of the year anyway. So,
and of all the new scales and designs that they've put Star Wars out in, the only two that have really caught on, I would say, are Pops and Black Series.
yeah.
Everything else that they've put out, doing 2-inch figures, doing metal figures, doing 9-inch figures, having the Unleashed figures, the Unleashed minifigures. I mean, like, they've tried so much over the last 40 years.
Yeah.
And even that was actually the original, the Kenner metal figures. Why am I blanking on the name? The ones from 81 and 82, the Microline.
Oh, yes.
The Kenner Microline. Even that, know your toy history. The reason that was rejected by parents is because they felt they'd just spent the last 2 years investing in Millennium Falcons and Dagobah playsets for 3 3/4. Now they're being told by the toy maker, oh, you got to buy everything all over again in a brand new scale. That was why that line wasn't rejected by kids. It was rejected by parents. Yet now we live in a world where you can get Star Wars from everything from a $250 Hot Toys, to a mini slug fig that comes with a vehicle. So, it's going to be an interesting thing. And the thing is, they're already obviously planning the 50th because
it's happening right now.
Yeah. So whatever they're doing, they're already deep in.
Yeah. I find Black Series is kind of funny because I think that a lot of people came into collecting with Black Series, and the reason I collect it is, I tell people this all the time, if Black Series wasn't the only, because I like collecting characters. I like buying every look of every character for Star Wars, specifically for the media that I grew up with. So for me, my original trilogy representation is Power of the Force 2 and Kenner and, older things like that. Whereas I don't really buy too much original trilogy unless it's like Stormtroopers or your Han, Luke, Chewie, those characters, for Black Series specifically. But the only reason that I collect that line so heavily is because it's the only line that has that character depth right now. If 3 3/4 still had it, I probably would be collecting 3 3/4. But what I think a lot of people miss is there's a lot of collectors that I know that came into Star Wars, like you said, with COVID. And, we're sitting at home, you're getting these stimulus checks, you're looking for a hobby, you're looking for something to spend your money on because you're just sitting at home all day. So a lot of people turned to collecting, and it was kind of funny because that in and of itself was kind of a fad. You had a bunch of people that came into the hobby and there wasn't enough stock. And so then the companies started pumping out all this extra stock. And by the time they finally caught up, all these people were like, I don't really care for collecting as much anymore. And you had the huge dip again. So it's kind of like on the production side of things, the companies were always just a little bit behind the curve because it was so unexpected, all of it was. But my opinion is, I think a lot of people forget that the reason that Black Series exists is because 3 3/4 was starting to go downhill with the recession back in 2008 and prices of production, like you said, going up. So they had to keep cutting corners essentially on the production of figures, and that was why Black Series came into existence. And that really is the reason that it did so well, is because of that big boom with a new scale, with Marvel Legends being so popular and everything at the same time. It was your first way to really crack into a growing market, whereas 3 3/4 was something else. So, but what I find interesting with Black Series collectors specifically is because from Black Series, I want small vehicles. I want, the bigger creatures. I wanted the Rancor back in 2021. I thought the campaign was awful for it. I thought the marketing for that was terrible. But I wanted the figure itself, like a big giant Rancor. That'd be awesome. And same goes for from Attack of the Clones when they're in the arena, the 3 arena beasts that they fight. I would love those in Black Series. However, with the collecting community in this line, there's this weird aversion that I don't see with any other line to buying anything over that $25 price point. I even see people say if Black Series figures go up to $30, I'm out on the line entirely. Is there like a correlation there? I mean, have you seen that sentiment yourself in in the Star Wars community of with Black Series? People get really weird about anything priced over that $25 price point.
Oh, it's not just the Star Wars community of Black Series. It's the entire toy collecting community. I mean, people are saying
Yeah.
the same thing about Marvel Legends and the same thing about WWE and yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, we all see it coming. I mean, there's already fall, like late fall Marvel Legends 2-packs that are the SRP is $60, which means the 2 figures are $30.
Yeah.
Which means single figures, yes. For Hasbro this fall, this late, like anything shipping October, November is going to be a $30 figure. So yeah, it's yeah. I mean, it's a price point that it's an adversive price point for all brands. People are just like, I just can't justify spending 30. I have a hard time spending $25 on a figure. When figures were 20, there were sometimes I would buy duplicates. I will not buy a duplicate at 25. It's crazy. It's only $5 more, but there's just something about that psychological. I mean, this would be a job less for a toy guru and more for a mind guru as to, yeah, why do these price points feel so abrasive? But yeah, we are about to hit the point that people are going to be like, no, I will not. And what does that mean? We'll start seeing, cost reduced toys. I mean, a big problem with Marvel Legends has been that they've been cost reducing the toys down to $25, as opposed to like when I was at Mattel, every time we got hit by a price increase, we would just increase the price to maintain quality.
Right.
But what Hasbro has been doing, and Mattel too, both companies. I mean, I use this actually a lot on my channel. This is a Masters of the Universe accessory from 2012, 2011. This is one from like 2-3 years ago. Same accessory.
Crazy.
But you can see, yeah, the raw plastic. Like this one has paint on the handle. This doesn't. It's also got paint, here. So, bam, this is what they're doing: is they're cost reducing toys down to the $25 price point. But they've gotten to the point that now costing them down to the 30, like that is taking away too much of the toy. So they're like, all right, we're going to have to just increase it to 30. And then it's going to go to 35, and then it's going to go to 40. Like,
and then where do we go from there? Yeah.
Which is why, honestly, I'm glad I own about 90% of what I want. There's a few 3 3/4 figures. Simalu, the last vintage Kenner figure that's never been made, is high on my list. I hope I don't have to buy a Death Star just to get him. There's like 3 or 4 Marvel Legends that are on my list to get, some Spidey villains, 2 X-Men characters. But I'm honestly really glad. I mean, my toy buying, as in like number of units, has dramatically gone down. But it's a combination of both price point. Like I'm not buying doubles, but it's also, after doing this for 40 years, it's like, how many more Chewbacca's do I need?
Yeah. Right.
Like, I have this Chewbacca 100 times, but I still bought this one because I'm a completist. But for the people who aren't crazy like you or me that are completists, it's so easy to pass. And the price points are just detrimental.
Yeah. It's such a hard problem for the industry to navigate right now is that example you brought up of the 2 staffs. That's a perfect example of, we're seeing the same thing with Black Series right now. I see a lot more things that are just done in raw plastic. Things even like as simple as like a lightsaber hilt used to be painted silver, and now they're just this weird like dull gray metal or dull gray plastic. Sometimes they don't even have paint applications anymore, and that's a big deal for adult collectors. And that's kind of, honestly, it's funny to me. It's like this weird conundrum we found ourselves in. The market has changed from kids to adults in a big way, And with that comes a higher expectation of quality and a higher care about price point. More than, you know, a kid just sees a cool toy in the store. They don't know anything about the price or how much paint the figure has or how far the knees and the elbows bend, if at all. The kid just sees a cool character and they want it off the shelf. Whereas adults, we have a whole different set of standards and we can be a lot more picky. And the only another big difference is adults will go online and go, you know, comment and complain, whereas kids, they don't do that. They can't in most cases. I do find it interesting. Now, for kind of touching on a point we talked about earlier here, and then I'll jump to some questions that my dad had for me to ask you that are not all Star Wars related. The one thing here is I had made a video maybe towards the end of 2024 on my channel, are titled "Are Clone Troopers the Future of the Black Series?" And in that, I have talked to several people about this idea, both, you know, like content creators and, you know, people who have worked for Hasbro and things like that. Clone Troopers, you don't have to apply almost any tooling budget to. And you have a whole generation of adult collectors now who adore Clone Troopers and will buy anything Clone Trooper. Very similarly to how you talk about your Han, your Luke, your Chewie, your Darth Vader. That's how my generation is with those characters, but also with Clone Troopers. We'll buy them as long as you paint them a different color and it's named a different character or a different legion. We'll buy them. We'll buy multiple of them. And for the Hasbro end of things, that you don't have to spend so much money tooling new parts. You just have to spend the money painting the figures because you have the mold is all set to go, the steel mold. And that could therefore help apply budget to other things like your deluxe Moma Nadon or more Cantina patrons or Jabba's denizens or things that collectors really, really want, those new characters with all that new tooling. And then you're kind of meeting the best of both worlds with both major generations of adult collector, your generation and mine. We grew up with different eras of Star Wars and both parties kind of get what they want a little bit quicker. Is that something you think is sustainable, or do you think that would be like something that would maybe burn out after a couple years? Because there are hundreds of Clone Trooper designs that people are constantly asking for in comment sections and forums and live stream chats and things like that.
I think something like that would do really well as like HasLab offerings with multi-packs.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. At retail, one of the things that retailers are constantly asking toy companies for are different silhouettes.
Okay.
And different colors. They want, so if they get an assortment of figures in a box, they want every single one to be, they don't want this, they don't want all of them to be the same character.
Yeah.
If you will. They want variety because one kid likes, you know, this color, another kid likes this color. It's a big thing like with Hot Wheels when they're packed out.
Yeah.
What they call the silhouette of the car. Mm. So, you know, like a sports car, even, you know, from 10 feet away looks different from a truck or different from trying to think of another kind of a Jeep or whatever.
Yeah.
So having all Clone Troopers, while there's definitely fans and growing, you know, as you said, your generation coming into that these 20-year age gap, that would, the appeal is there and the demand is there, but it would bomb at retail because, you know, kids looking for Chewbacca or Darth Vader would be upset if it's just, you know, Clone Trooper or Mandalorian. You know, kids do want other characters, and going overboard with one character in one color palette with one silhouette, even though the characters are different to you and I, you know, the 501st has, you know, like you said, 50 different unique troopers in it, you know, from, you know, 7s to, you know, I mean, they're all different. To a kid and a mom, zero difference. And that's the problem, is that even though the adult market is growing, you still have to, especially at retail, because the retail aisle at the toy aisle at retail is really there as a movie poster or, you know, a promotion for movies. You know, that's why they have the giant Jurassic Park end cap and the giant Superman. They're there to promote the movies for the most part. So that's why something like anything that is getting into that level of detail as far as character differentiation, like whether they have the seal on this side of the helmet or this side, that's a great HasLab multi-pack right there.
Do you think that fan channel is a good avenue for things like this too? Because I would like to hear your perspective about things like Big Bad Toy Store, or even like things like GameStop or online retailers like Amazon, where there isn't a physical storefront. Do you think that that idea has more of a place there? And I mean, do you like fan channel? Do you feel like it's helping the industry?
Oh, I do, especially in the sense that, one of the things people, I think, have a negative view on that is actually a positive to me are exclusives. People tend to get bitter with exclusives, like, oh, it sucks, I can only get to the game shop or only a Target. But you have to realize that's an additional SKU you're getting that wouldn't exist without that channel. So if GameStop closed, like when Toys R Us closed, we lost access to Toys R Us exclusives. There was great, I remember, white boxed Ewok multi packs that Toys R Us had, and the Battle Over Endor X-wing pilots. Those were fantastic packs. They only existed because Toys R Us existed. Now that Toys R Us doesn't exist, we're not getting those anymore. So the more places selling toys, the better. Online, you're losing the kid. It's really hard for parents to shop for toys online. For
Yeah.
collectors, it's super easy, so it's great. But that's why you need the retail aisle, because a parent needs to see the value and understand what they're buying. It's very frightening to buy a toy for a child. It is,
Yeah.
especially if it's not your child.
Yeah. I've been there. I mean, when we, even for my fiance, her nephew, when we go shopping for his birthday or something, it's a little easier because he's a boy, so I kind of put myself in his shoes, like, oh, what would I have wanted when I was his age? But even then, not everything is the same, and it can be very difficult trying to pick out just the right thing at the toy aisle at Walmart or Target or wherever.
Which is precisely why variety
Hmm.
on shelf is so important for retail,
Gotcha.
which is why that clone idea. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. I know
Um,
you said you had some, because I've got a couple more minutes. Do you want to jump
yeah.
into like the questions you had?
Yeah, yeah. So some of these questions we already answered. So these are questions from my father. He and I, again, like I said, we've been watching your channel for years and years and years now. So these are conversations we've had with each other. Um, what are some obvious mistakes that you see toy companies making right now?
Um, well, I mean, I mentioned those three fallacies of trying to get 3D printing, genderless toys, and as an app to toy. I think are the three biggest mistakes.
Yeah,
And then not making product that is based on like not making characters that kids want, instead just making the ones that the licensors say to make.
right, right. Um, and yeah, I feel like we touched on some of that before in the conversation. Now, here's a good one here. If you got a phone call from a successful or profitable toy company, independent or corporate, and they wanted to hand you the business, what would be a few of your top priorities for making cool toys people actually want to buy, both kids and adults?
Well, I'd probably first identify every toy that company makes, identify the 20% that actually make money, and then eliminate the other 80%.
There we go. Is less more? I guess a follow up is less more sometimes with some of these.
You know, it's only more when the large companies like Hasbro and Mattel, and that's true. Only about 20% of the toys are what make them money.
Okay.
80% they lose money on or
Yeah.
aren't. But they need to make them in order to retain retail space. So it's a very snake eating its tail kind of thing. They have to
Yeah.
make toys that won't sell just so they could claim enough space in the aisle for the toys that will sell.
Yeah. That's a crazy game to play, especially with how high some of the prices are for these licensing fees with these contracts that they have to pay, and then it's
Yeah,
like, yeah,
licensing fees are absolutely ridiculous.
yeah. Um, Here's a good one from my father here. You've done a very good job at keeping the internet trolls and all the collectors that love to collect but hate the companies that produce what they collect at bay. How do you manage this?
I'm sorry, how do I keep who at bay?
Oh, internet trolls, people that are trying to get a rise out of you with a comment or
Oh, well, I
think
mean,
very negatively of you or things like that.
I guess basically at the end of the day, it just comes down to black and white. They're wrong. I'm right. So say whatever you want. I've seen, without naming names, I've seen people come out and say, oh, 100,000 people want this toy. I know what the production run numbers are. You're lucky to have 5,000. So by you saying 100,000, you are literally misleading people.
Hmm.
So if they're going to come out and bash me, I'm like, okay, but I'm right. So
Yeah. Is the market for this stuff a lot smaller than a lot of people make it out to be? Because
exponentially,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I
Um,
had trouble selling Aquaman when I was at Mattel.
wow.
Like we barely sold 2,000 units of a major Aquaman figure. So
And there you go. That just tells you right there. Yeah.
yeah,
That's something I've always thought to be true anyway, is that it's not nearly as, especially not as big as it used to be 20, 30 years ago. But yeah,
and it's
that's
prices are the biggest factor in that.
absolutely. What is your favorite Marvel figure?
My favorite Marvel figure.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a uh let's see. Gosh, I mean, Venom, Deathlock. I mean, I'm looking at kind of like the ones that are close to me on my shelf. Silver Surfer, the ones that are within reach.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, Spider-Man is probably my top guy, but I still have not gotten a Spider-Man figure that I've just been perfect. Even the $50 maximum one, I've got my issues with. But
Yeah.
I guess Spider-Man is probably my number one guy.
Yeah. What's your favorite Spider-Man comic appearance? That's a question from me.
Um, let's see, probably Amazing Spider-Man 340. Is it 46 and 47? It's the one where Venom and Spider-Man are fighting on the island.
I don't know the comic numbers, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the issues is Venom holding Peter's skull and
Yeah.
saying like, "I alas, poor Spider-Man, I killed him well."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great fight.
My favorite one is the Amazing Fantasy #1 Spider-Man with the just that original comic look
As in like
for
the first appearance.
the first appearance of Spider-Man. Because when I was a kid, our local newspaper did every Sunday. If you paid an extra dollar or whatever, you could get each week you'd get a reprint of that original comic run. And I think I had the first like 30 or 40 issues on the reprint. So for me, more so than any of the movie Spider-Man, that original comic look for Spider-Man, that's my favorite Spider-Man appearance.
So a quick story. I know we're going to hit time soon, but
Yeah, yeah.
I have cousins in Raleigh. The first time when we moved here to North Carolina, we visited them, and they knew I was a comic book fan. So they pulled out this box and said, "Check this out." And they open it up. It's an original copy of Amazing Fantasy 15, totally beat up, but it's an original.
Yeah.
It's probably in like condition like 4 or 3 as far as like AFA.
Rating.
But it was just like so cool to like actually pick it up and like flip through a real Amazing Fantasy 15. They didn't even keep
Yeah.
it in a baggie. They just had it in a box.
My dad gave me a couple of his Wolverine and Punisher comics from the '90s that he has in the bags and everything. But yeah, those are fun too. And then last one here. What is your favorite personal story behind anything in your collection? Just one single item.
A personal story behind. I'm like looking at my collection, thinking
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
what has a good story behind it? I mean, professionally, I mean, Commandy in the DC Universe Classics line was a figure that I was allowed to choose. Like Warner Brothers were like, we're going to give you one slot that you can choose a character, and we're not going to, we won't have any comments. And I always wanted a Commandy figure. So there's a couple figures, Black Hawk in the JLU line. Like having the complete Star Wars, like I can't wait to set up my cantina when that shows up. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to like. I'm like trying to think of a good Star Wars story. So here's a good one to end it. I talked about how I wanted the Simalu Imperial Dignitary. That's the one from the vintage line that hasn't been made. Hasbro did make 2 Imperial Dignitaries years ago in the Gold or the Blue Saga series. This would have been like around the time of Attack of the Clones, a little after that. And one, for years, Hasbro thought that checked off doing Simu, which I was like, no, it isn't. Like you said with the clones, they're different characters.
Yes, they're different.
But I will never forget when I went into Target and found them on the shelf. It was my birthday. It was actually my birthday. And someone had gotten there right before me and got both of them. They're only like one per case.
Yeah.
And I was really sad. I said, you know, it is my birthday. Is there any way I could convince you to let me have one of those? And I showed him my driver's license that it was actually my birthday. And he's like, happy birthday. And he hands me both of them. And I was like, wow. And I'll just never forget that. That was just awesome. It was an awesome collecting moment.
Awesome. So I have 3 lightning round questions that I ask every single person that I interview. It is first one, favorite Star Wars movie?
Empire.
Favorite Star Wars TV show?
Mandalorian.
Good pick. And then what's your favorite Star Wars character if you had to pick one?
Biggs
Darklighter.
Yep.
Love it. That's a good choice. So with that, that's going to wrap up our conversation today.
I do want my Biggs Darklighter Tatooine Cape Black Series figure. I will absolutely
Anchorhead Biggs Darklighter. Yep. Yeah. So guys, that'll wrap it up. Again, Scott, is there anything that you want to plug real quick before we wrap up?
Well, just, again, be sure to check out my website, Spector Creative, if you have ideas for toys and need help getting them to market. And if you're looking for an awesome summer read, you got a pool, you got a flight, The Nile Quest, Time of Clive, fun, easy to read adventure books. You can check them out on Amazon. They're available for purchase right now.
All right. Awesome.
And my YouTube.
Obviously. And all that stuff will be linked in the description. So if you're watching or listening, wherever you're seeing this, it'll be linked in the description along with all the other links you can find for my stuff as well. Scott, once again, thanks for taking the time to talk and have this conversation, answer some questions that myself and so many other collectors burning questions that we have, and hearing it from someone who actually has knowledge of the topic as opposed to just speculative answers, based on no knowledge whatsoever. That means a lot, and it does a lot for this community, and your channel does a lot for this community as well. So thank you for taking the time today.
Honestly, it was a pleasure to chat. Happy to jump back in anytime. And
awesome.
If you also have you or your dad ever have ideas for video topics, send them my way, because believe me, I'm always looking. But I want to do the topics people actually want to know about. So and that goes for all of you listening as well. So easy to get a hold of me through spectrocreative.com.
Awesome. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. Again, make sure to subscribe to Spector Creative if you're not already. And as always, may the Force be with you, and live long and prosper.
Breaking off. All units, fire at will. 1-2, pick a target. Too many, Captain. Watch your stabilizer, Gold 6. Anybody cover me. I got 2 vultures on my tail. Gotta hold them here. Watch your left. I can't shake them. I'm hit. Where's our